So I got married in 2020, the same year Corona struck us. So they call it COVID 19, but it was in 2020 that we actually started getting lockdowns, right? So back in 2020 and 2021, when there was forced lockdown in 2020, and when the lockdowns got released in 2021, lots of couples filed for divorce, and divorce rates actually rose up. And the reason was husband and wife, they were forced to live inside a room and they were forced to confront each other, forced to see each other's faces the entire day, 24/7. So when we got married in 2020, my wife used to joke saying, "Are we going to get divorced in 2021?" And I would be like, "Ha ha ha ha." But exactly like all the other COVID 19 couples, in 2021, when the lockdown got released, she ran away from home back to her parents' house saying she doesn't want to live with me anymore. And we tried to negotiate, calm her down, resolve the fights. Mainly, my friend Boxer worked a lot in saving our marriage. So he used to call her up. So my friend is in US and we are in India. So there is this 12-hour time zone difference. But he still used to go on calls with her and with me, and he used to try to patch us up together and tried really hard to resolve our conflicts. Mhm. So basically, he was our therapist and he was doing counseling for us. But still, in 2021 November, we got separated. Despite my friends, mine, and my wife's best efforts, we were just not compatible with each other. So 2021 November to 2024 November, it's been 3 years since we are separated. And looking back, I can see flaws both on her side as well as mine. But since this is my video, I'm going to be frank only about my toxicity and my negative flaws that led to the ruin of the relationship. So the whole purpose of this video is to give you awareness, because what I went through in my marriage, many other people would be going through in their own marriages. So hopefully this video helps you with your own marriage and possibly make it better. So first things first, I had anger issues. So I used to get really, really angry for really, really small things. This was something I was born with. So even in childhood, I used to get really angry and scream and shout at my parents for really, really small things. But my parents kept ignoring it, thinking I'll grow up. And I kept ignoring it, thinking people will understand. But the main reason I kept ignoring this quality of mine is because I didn't show this quality to other people, like my friends, colleagues, or classmates. They don't know this side of mine. Only my parents, father, mother, and sister know this. And because I got married, even my wife got to know this. So there is no justification for this behavior. I was wrong and I had to change. So the only justification is any person you take, they will have both pluses and minuses. So even your partner will have pluses and minuses. And when you both meet, you will first see only the pluses. But as the relationship goes on, you'll start seeing the minuses. And in fact, the whole point of relationship is to grow together, where after lots and lots of fights, you both reduce your minuses and become better people together. So some people are able to do it as one unit, but some people just need to separate in order to grow themselves. So coming back to my story, this was one issue that I had to go fix in myself. I tried to do it in the relationship itself, but she was not patient enough. Now, my second toxic trait or a negative flaw or bad quality is porn addiction. Yes, porn addiction is actually a real thing. Just like cigarette addiction or alcohol addiction, porn addiction also affects your relationship. How? Well, alcohol is obvious. The person itself is completely absent. But for porn addiction and cigarette addiction, it's not that obvious. But if you really carefully observe how a cigarette addict behaves, he would all the time be very impatient. He'll be all the time thinking about cigarette, 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 cigarette. So if you are having a conversation with him, then a cigarette addict won't be able to focus on you as he is so needy for the cigarette. Similarly, if you are on a date with a girl, a porn addict won't be able to focus on connecting with her as he is so busy being needy for the sex. This you would have seen in your own family. Let's say your family sits down for dinner. Before the invention of mobile phones and TV, you guys would have actually connected with each other, shared dialogues or shared jokes, shared how your day went with each other, and the bond you have with your family would have just grown stronger and stronger. But ever since the invention of mobile phones and TV, people are all the time scrolling on their phones or changing the channels. Now there's no conversation in a family and the connection has reduced, and you guys have slowly grown apart. This is because TV, Instagram scrolling, YouTube reels, Netflix, all of this comes under dopamine addiction. So what is dopamine? Well, dopamine is anything that excites you. So let's say you're in a park bench and a hot girl passes you by. Suddenly get excited, right? That's because looking at her, dopamine got released in your mind. So porn, sex, cigarette, alcohol, TV, Netflix, all this are very interesting, and all of them release dopamine in our mind. So dopamine is not a bad thing. It's only when you get addicted that it becomes a bad thing. So say you stop consuming all of these things. Say you've gone to a meditation retreat, you've gone on fasting, you have stopped all phones, TVs, everything, you've switched it off, and you're just sitting in a park bench and just observing nature. So this is you in the bench, and you see birds flying, children playing, sun setting. Back in those days, like before TV and mobile phones, people actually used to enjoy all these things. But now, when you ask a kid to stop all his video games and go sit in a park and observe all these things, this would sound so boring to him, it would feel like a punishment. This is because the sun setting, children playing, birds flying, all these release small amounts of dopamine. So, if this is time and this is dopamine, then a cool breeze passing you by releases a small dopamine in your mind. And for the wind to blow on you again, it takes so much time. So, the magnitude of the pleasure is also low, and the time taken to get the next hit is also high. This is what normal life looks like. So, even if you're on a date with a girlfriend, say this is dopamine and this is time, then as you're having a conversation with her, then suddenly you make a joke and she laughs. Small dopamine. And again, for another humor to occur, it takes time. This is the general pattern of life. But when you're a dopamine addict, this is what your graph looks like. You take a sip of wine, you get a huge spike of dopamine. You go for another round, huge dopamine. And the difference between this graph and this graph is that the magnitude is high and the time taken for the next hit is very low. So, for a person in dopamine addiction, say a chain smoker who takes cigarette after cigarette, or an Instagram addict who keeps scrolling reel after reel, all of them are getting huge hits of dopamine in very short amounts of time. And as your brain gets trained in this kind of dopamine pattern, internally inside the mind, the dopamine receptors reduce their sensitivity. So, what happens even if you get a huge amount of dopamine, your mind is not able to feel it because their receptors have reduced their sensitivity. So, an alcohol addict, what does he do? He's not able to get high anymore. So, he goes for a more stronger drink. So, if you were first drinking 5% alcohol or 10% alcohol, like beer or something, the same beer stops giving you the high. So, now what you do, you go for a more stronger drink, like say whiskey or rum. So, the alcohol concentration is higher, and so the kick is double. And the same pattern continues. After a couple more rounds, you stop getting high from that 40% alcohol and you go for an alcohol that is even higher. So, your brain reads the amount of dopamine that you're receiving and shifts this baseline to that level. So, this becomes your new zero. Basically, the number line moves upwards. And so, if this is your new zero, then only peaks that are above this number line are going to get detected. So, if you increase your alcohol percentage, and if this is your new normal, then again the brain is going to shift the baseline and make this your new baseline. So, shifting the baseline upwards this way makes sure nothing below the baseline you are able to feel. So, for a dopamine addict who is right now at this level, if you tell him to go sit in a park, and in the park, let's say the amount of dopamine he's getting is this much, and this much, and this much, do you think he would be able to feel this dopamine and actually be able to take pleasure from it? Of course not. So, a person under dopamine addiction won't be able to enjoy simple pleasures of life. This is called as progressive narrowing of the things that gives you pleasure. So, before all these things used to give you pleasure, but slowly they all vanished and it has narrowed to only this one thing that gives you pleasure: dopamine addiction. So, how does this relate to my life and my marriage? Well, porn addiction has the same effect on dating. Say you are out on a date with a girl, and this is the amount of dopamine you're getting. But if you're a porn addict, then in just 5 minutes, just go to any porn website, masturbate yourself, ejaculate. Then in just 2 minutes, you get a huge hit of dopamine from porn stars like Sunny Leon or Riley Reid. Then your mind gets used to this peak, the baseline shifts, and you're not able to feel pleasures from simple conversations that happen in our day to day life. So, just like a cigarette addict is not able to focus on your conversation, a porn addict is not able to connect with his partner because they are both needy for sex and cigarette. They are both needy for that huge dopamine hit and cannot tolerate or put effort into connecting with their partner and enjoying the simple pleasures of life. So, if in one word I need to explain all of this, then that word is impatience. When you are a dopamine addict, you become impatient. So, if you go on a date, you're like all the time restless. You find it boring and you're like all the time thinking, when will you have sex? You're not able to pay attention or focus on the girl and her problems. But this I didn't realize inside the relationship. I just knew that I found her boring, but only after the breakup and the separation and me trying for dating and making cold approaches that I started to realize all the signs and quit my porn addiction. So quitting porn addiction is actually not that easy. It's just like cigarettes or alcohol. But it's only the first 30 days that is very difficult. But if you cross that 30 days through sheer willpower and tolerating the pain, then you can get out of any kind of addiction, even cigarette, alcohol, or TV and Instagram reels. But the first 30 days is really, really hard. I remember one of those days I actually cried a tear from not being able to watch porn. And as soon as you quit all dopamine addictions, you'll find that the baseline drops back to zero. Your mind is now able to appreciate small, small pleasures of life. You value your partner and you cherish the moments that you spend with her more. So, quality of relationships go higher as the dopamine addictions go lower. And the best way to reset your brain, make it behave normally again, is to take up meditation, as focusing on your breath resets your brain back to baseline. And my final negative trait, my last toxic habit, was I was very controlling. So basically, I was a very, very bad boy back then. But unlike my anger, this actually has good reason and good justification. Say someone is smoking or drinking. Now, because of this habit, their lifespan has become shorter. So, if they didn't drink and didn't smoke, they would have lived long till 80 years. But because they smoke and they drink, they have a quicker death and a shorter life. So, what you do? You, as their loved one, you try so much to make them stop smoking and make them stop drinking. But they don't listen to you. You keep convincing them, you keep lecturing them, you keep advising them. But every day, night, they keep on drinking, they keep on smoking. So at one point, you get frustrated because you can't watch your loved ones kill themselves, right? So, say there is a railway track and there is a guy standing in to die in front of the train. What do? You go pull him forcefully only out of the track. Similarly, what you do? You forcefully try to control them to make them stop smoking and drinking. Basically, tough love. You're being tough on them out of love for them. So you want them to live a long life. That's why you're being so angry with them and shouting at them and screaming at them. And you're forcing to make them stop drinking and smoking. Basically, you become controlling. For example, even for my uncle, he's a severe alcoholic. So to make him stop drinking, my parents made him join a de-addiction center where they literally beat him up to make him stop smoking and drinking. And even my own sister says I produce zero value to the society, so I better stop doing YouTube because according to her, YouTube is ruining my life. And in order to have a much happier life, she has to be tough on me and make me stop YouTube. Tough love. But the problem with tough love is it's hard to see the love and it's easy to see only the toughness. For example, I have received many negative comments on YouTube. But if I rank all the negative comments and pick the top most negative comment, the most negative of them all, then that would be this comment that my sister gave me. Similarly, with my wife, she used to be on lots of bad habits. For example, she used to say, I'm depressed because I'm not able to get a job. So I used to give her all the study materials and tell her to study this, that, this, that, this, that. And then I go to office and then I come back. But in the evening, I see her scrolling Instagram and YouTube reels and studying. She has not even done one single bit. So Instagram and YouTube reels are fun, but studying will give her the maximum happiness, the bigger happiness. So what I used to do is to come home and then shout at her like anything. What the hell are you doing? What are you doing? Are you mad or what? Idiot or what? This and that. So the same thing. Out of love for our loved ones, we start controlling them because we think that's what's best for them. But our loved ones see only the tough part of tough love. They never see the love. They hate us for the force. They hate us for being controlling. And they hate us for the negative comments that they are sending our way, just like my sister. So the truth is, no matter how badly you want to control, you actually don't have any control over your partner. No matter what road they are taking, no matter how bad you think that road is, you cannot switch them from that path to the path you think is right for them because what they have is free will. And at the end of the day, they only have to decide on choosing the right path. No matter how badly we want them to choose the right path, we can't actually push them onto the right path. This lesson I learned the hard way by destroying my marriage, which I'm giving to you for free now. And the way I learned this lesson is by taking dog training. So my wife took a dog because we thought a dog would help her with the depression. And I took dog training tutorials in order to train the dog, because an untrained dog is very difficult to handle. It becomes a problem of its own. For example, our own house owner, in their house, because the dog was not trained, one day it got so bad between the house owner and the dog that the dog started chasing our owner and he had to go hide in the bathroom in order to protect himself. So I got really scared by that story and started taking dog training courses. So in dog training, this is the dog and this is its behavior. Now you want to change that behavior to something else. For example, I was training my dog in order to brush its teeth. But whenever I put my hand in its mouth, it started biting me. So if it keeps maintaining this behavior, I can't brush its teeth. It will have a shorter life because it is going to develop dental problems. So I want to change its behavior where it doesn't bite and I keep on brushing its teeth and it has a much longer life. Same story. Harry Potter, this chapter. Now, before dog training, whenever it bit me, I used to shout at my dog and scream at my dog. This is called as negative reinforcement learning. Basically, you're giving negative reward in order to scare the dog into good behavior. But there is something called positive reinforcement learning, where instead of retaliating back, meaning if the dog bites, you shout, instead you learn to be more patient with the dog. Even though it is biting you, you tolerate all that pain and you never give back any pain to the dog. And every day you keep trying again and again, basically showing perseverance in order to change the behavior of the dog. So negative reward is instant because when you scare the dog, it will immediately change its behavior. But positive reinforcement learning, where you're patient and you're perseverant, where every day you try teaching the dog again and again, no, this is wrong, patiently taking all that pain and never retaliating back. Well, this takes a long time. It is slow to change the behavior. But in positive reinforcement learning, your relationship with the dog is superb. But in negative reinforcement learning, your relationship is super bad. So on one hand, you get quick results, but your long-term relationship with your dog is super bad. But on the other hand, you get slow results, but your long-term relationship with your dog is super healthy. Now, everybody would start with negative reinforcement learning. A perfect example of this would be our freedom struggle. So Britishers turned us into slaves and freedom fighters started attacking them back. But only when Gandhi came into the picture and taught us positive reinforcement learning, basically ahimsa, we changed our tactics, started being more patient with them, being more perseverant with them, and changed their behavior from slavery to freedom. So from Britishers' freedom struggle to dog training to relationship to a couple fighting about things, everywhere it's the same concept, and everywhere people start out by making this mistake where they fight, argue, quarrel, and slowly in trying to help each other, they destroy the relationship that they have with each other. So I learned the hard way of how to not be controlling, how to change your partner and reduce their flaws using love and love only. But it was too late because the relationship was already over. So hopefully this video shows you how you can solve or address problems in your own relationship with your own partner. So to summarize, I was irrationally angry, I was very impatient due to porn addiction, and I was very controlling because of tough love. And these three toxic traits together destroyed my marriage. And if you look more closely, all three problems are actually the same problem. Because in controlling topic, I was talking about patience. In porn addiction, I was talking about impatience. And anger is nothing but giving into your emotions in the moment without thinking, without being calm. So to solve anger, if I become calm, to solve my impatience, if I become patient, then all of the problems in my relationship actually disappear. And like I said before, this calmness and this patience you naturally get from meditation. So if you meditate, all your relationship problems will get solved. At least mine would have. Because any emotion that you have, high, strong emotion like anger or strong emotion like horniness, all of them become smaller and more manageable because meditation helps you moderate your emotions. So if you have reached till here, the end of the video, then the one lesson that I want to share with you is meditation. Stop scrolling your phones and start connecting with your partner. Start accepting their flaws and stop controlling their bad habits. Be more patient and perseverant and play the long game. So maybe in 6 months or 8 months down the line, they will finally listen to you and stop all of their bad habits. And try not to get angry very quickly, just like me. Be better than me. I'll see you in the next video.